But but if I do get assigned RIT, I'm gonna RIT like a motherfucker.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tailboard Misfits podcast. I'm your host, John Velez. Today, we have the honor of hosting Captain Rob Ramirez. Rob was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and he's been a passionate student of the fire service for over 22 years now. He's got a lot of certifications for training, and since 2005, he's served as a rescue team manager for the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA USAR Florida Task Force out of Miami. He's also deployed on many national and international high-profile USAR missions, including the Haiti earthquake in 2010 and major hurricanes Katrina and Harvey. He's the founder and lead instructor of Mayday Mindset Consulting LLC, and he's also the lead instructor for the fire rescue programs at the Fort Lauderdale Fire Expo Conference. And he travels nationally and internationally as a guest instructor, speaker, and keynote at a lot of fire conferences. So, Rob, man, I really appreciate you being on the show today. How you doing?
What's up, brother? Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad we got this technology figured out. We're gonna have a good talk.
Yeah, if everyone that listens to this could know the troubles we went through, they'd probably laugh at us and just already turn it off, even though that the majority of it was probably my fault. So
no, okay. No chance, dude.
So awesome. The first thing I wanted to talk about was Mayday Mindset. We kind of talked about it. I haven't caught your class yet. I'm really hoping to make it down to the Dagum fire conference to catch at least the lecture part. And one of the questions I had was, how did you get passionate just about the Mayday mindset, and how did that class come to fruition?
Long story short, and it won't be short. Anytime anybody starts an answer with long story short or real quick, guys, you're in for a ride. So, anyone that says, hey, bring it in real quick, it's never quick. So John, honestly, man, the Mayday mindset, it's about 10 years old now, although I've only really been doing it on the road for about the last 5 years. But as far as the class and how I got interested in it, the older I got in the fire service, the cooler it became for me, just for myself, not in general. Just Rob being cool with Rob and who he is and what his passions are, to dive deep into the things that I thought were cool. There was a part of my career where I wanted to do everything for everyone. I wanted to be a good paramedic. I wanted to be a good firefighter. I wanted to go learn about hazmat. I wanted to be a good rescue tech guy. I wanted to go teach rescue classes, teach engine classes, teach truck. And I was just so freaking passionate. Any outlet that I can receive, I was using it to get my passion out and feed my soul, right? Somewhere along the line, some of those incidents that you just referred to in the USAR world happened. And I found myself jammed up in positions that I had never been in, particularly in Haiti in 2010, where we were caught in a real bad aftershock with I'm a guy from Miami, Florida. I'm cool with hurricanes. I don't deal with tornadoes or earthquakes. And that was my first earthquake experience. So an aftershock, just another earthquake. And a bunch of people got jammed up in there. And the way that I responded with all those years of training really sent my brain weeks later for a ride. I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I wasn't as cool, calm, collected, and cucumber cold as I thought I was. And I found myself really just reacting to the environment and not controlling my reactions. That made me a student of the game. And then later on that year, just happens to be that one of my mentors took me to a class down at one of the local fire departments here, put together a 40-hour survival and RIT program for their members, but they were gracious enough to let us from the outside come in and take it. And when I saw that was an actual thing that people were doing, attached to what I had gone through my experience, the questions I had of myself and my performance, and my ability to apply training in a real world environment when my life was in danger, it drove me down this road, which it's a fire that never turns off. You can't stop loving what you love. You just wake up and love it, you go to sleep and you love it. And if something comes across that looks like it, smells like it, or sounds like it, you stop and dive deep into it. And that's what I've been doing the last 10 years. Anything that has to do with firefighter rescue, self-rescue, emotions or behaviors under stress, and the way that we can learn to apply those learned actions in a real world setting, it freaking moves my needle, man. Really does.
Yeah, I really like that, because I've kind of had that own thing myself. Just been in situations or learned about something and then just kind of attached to it and really just try to immerse myself in it and learn more about it. And I'm obviously not teaching at conferences like yourself, but even teaching some of the new guys at my department, like just getting out there and just learning as much as I can. And then really for me, whenever I teach it, it just kind of reaffirms stuff in my head more and more and more. So the contents of your class, and I don't want to spoil it, especially for myself who wants to take it. Is it more RIT based or is it more of like resiliency based, if that makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So like, it's funny because it's called the Mayday Mindset, and I don't teach one RIT skill the entire lecture.
Okay.
Not a single one. If you want to do RIT skills, you go to our hot program, and we'll go over, the how to, the technical component. A goes to B, B goes to C.
Right.
The entire presentation goes over the proper training of our members to react appropriately in those situations based on what we know about human behavior under stress. If we talk about specifics, we do deep dives into psychology, physiology. We do deep dives into case studies and data, data-driven, street-vetted. That's our little thing. When we talk about data-driven, street-vetted, it's because we want to be data-informed in what we're teaching. There was a time in our fire service where we just taught what we were taught, and they taught us what they were taught, and that chain of continuum went back 100 years. When it comes specifically, John, to the world of firefighter rescue and self-rescue, and Maydays in particular, we've only been tracking those for the better part of about 10 years to where we can actually say, hey, this sounds like it'll work, this sounds like it won't. When it comes to the world of firefighter rescue and behavior under stress in the Mayday environment, no one's really been tracking that specifically for firefighters. We had to, like, for example, I'll use myself as an example. 10 years ago, in 14, when we first started like really teaching these classes, the data that I was extrapolating was coming from the military and from the police department, because they've been collecting data on stressful reactions under fire. And I would just change the word out police officer to firefighter when I was reading these books. And I would change the word soldier to firefighter when I was reading these books. And these books kind of guided me into the world of, okay, it doesn't matter if you're a SEAL Team 6 member or a day one firefighter. You remove the uniform, put them under stress, consequences that result in life or death, and the human brain does what the human brain's done for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
When you got out of that cave, you believe in that shit 1,000 years ago, and it was you or the dinosaur, that brain kept you alive. And those primitive instincts are still ingrained in us today. So if you do not train yourself to stop, analyze, and move past those instincts in a real world scenario, it's not going to happen. You're not going to suddenly become MacGyver, find a paperclip and a condom and build a bomb. That kind of shit doesn't happen. Right, we don't get better, we get worse.
I've read the basis of Dave Grossman's On Combat, right? And I think a lot of like the human behavior, like especially as it pertains to us as firemen, like it's all in that, right? And it's the same thing, just like you said. You can replace whatever person he's using in that book with firefighter, and it's very applicable, especially when it comes to heart rates and stress acclimation and stuff like that. So in your trainings, and this is a problem that I feel like I know that I've experienced personally, is we put people in these situations where realistically it is a SCBA confidence course rather than a RIT training drill, and we're calling it a RIT training drill. And so we're developing training scars, and we're getting people like, hey, there's a door right there, and I know in a real world scenario you can use it, but right now, like, it's out of play, right? And so like I have trouble doing those things, and at least for me, the stuff that I know, I'm able to tell myself like, hey, I know what this is. This is an SBA confidence course. This isn't a RIT training drill. And so I use it as such, right? I kind of play the game, if you will. And I was curious of the theories or the methods that you would use as it pertains to just that stress inoculation, right? Because they say stress inoculation leads to stress acclimation, and it's something that I know me and you probably totally get when it comes to inoculation and acclimation. I just use heat as an example, right? You work down in Florida, I work in Texas. When it starts getting hot, like we got to get out and work in that stuff to acclimate our bodies to it. And it's the same thing with stress. So is there anything that you do or any theories or methods that you have that work to where we're, and I guess it's kind of a two-part question. Is there any theories or methods you do? And then the other part of that is, are you pushing people to failure or to the brink of failure?
Here we go. It's a great question. So I just put together an article for a project that Corley Moore is working on, right? And the actual article is called the effective introduction of artificial stress during firefighter training. It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
Sounds real nerdy, but I simplified it. There's a right and a wrong way, and the right time and the wrong time to introduce artificial stress during firefighter training. Because no matter what we do, it's always going to be artificial stress. We're not going to go in there to shooting real live rounds at them. We're not going to set fires to where they're going to get burned. We're going to try to avoid those things because it's bad for business, right? So what we're going to do is inject as many artificial stressors as possible in an effort for the person to actually work through them and come to the proper answer that we want them to find in case they do get jammed up. Now, how do you do that? That's a whole entire algorithm, man. It depends on the tenure, experience, and performance ability of the student. So no two students get treated the same. No two students ever get treated the same. The way that we should do it for a day one student is to ask yourself as the instructor, Instructor Rob, Instructor John, Instructor insert name here, what is the purpose of this training? What is my end goal for this group of students? Because the students drive the class. If my goal is to teach them a singular skill, let's talk about a firefighter air pack conversion to package a down firefighter. If that's a station that I am running, that's a skill that I am being asked to teach, then my goal is to break the technical skill down to where those members can do it first and foremost correctly. So I don't introduce time or heat or loss of visibility or loss of dexterity by putting oven mitts or fire gloves on, right? After they've mastered the skill, at that point, I can start introducing things as simple as time. You bring out a stopwatch and you time them. The problem with the fire service, company officers included, is that the stopwatches come out prematurely. I heard Chief Brian Brush talk about that, where sometimes we're very premature with the stopwatch and we get married to that number. You got to don your face piece in 15 seconds. You got to don your air pack in a minute and whatnot. You got to do this, that, or the other in 2 minutes. You got to get a portable ground ladder up in X amount of time. That's cool for fire academy cadets or students before we hire them, or after we hire them, if your fire department does a in-house academy, because we want to add stress and see how they perform under a little bit of stress in the form of a stopwatch. Because we have a limited amount of time, bookend start date, bookend end date, that we can afford to train these members. And if they don't fall and meet those qualifications and or requirements in that bookend time frame, then we got to let them go and find somebody else. This may not be the job for them. But let's forget about those kids. That's a whole different avenue. Let's talk about guys like you and me. If I go teach a fire conference tomorrow, I am very mindful of, I have different members from different organizations, from different parts of the country that have different policies and expectations and have been to more fires than me or less fires than me. It doesn't matter. It's all relative. So when I teach to the human being involved. They are taught the skill broken down to the devil's in details, disrobe every skill. After the skill is broken down very slowly, at that point, we introduce a watch. We start taking metrics. After that's been done and they meet the metric, then we add fire gloves. Then we take away visibility. Then we add auditory exclusion in the form of noise pollution. Then we can introduce heat. Then we can watch them work through their actual decision-making algorithm and interrupt their OODA loop process. Why they give me the right answer or perform the right skill to solve the problem, but we take away that option, not by telling them the door is not really there when it is, by actually putting in a room where the door is not there. Because when you tell somebody you can't use that door for the scenario, I call that fucking fairy dusting. Mm-hmm. I'm fairy dusting you. That door's not really there. Well, hell yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And those components in a gradual, systematic fashion, stopping every time that they fail and they fail to meet the objective, whether it's physical or mentally, and taking them back to the last step where they found success is a form of progress capture. And here's what I'll tell you, John. That slow progress capture, just like rope, when you capture a rope or you capture what you've gained in a haul, before you haul again, if you just keep moving down that rope without actually capturing your progress, you're literally doing nothing. So if we take a student from point A, day one, to point B, blacked out, in heat, below 3 feet, fully encapsulated, auditory exclusion, take away their sight, interrupt their OODA loop, prematurely, you end up with what you referred to earlier as a training scar. Mm-hmm. And then they don't learn, and then we blame them for it, when in reality, we've been taught to teach wrong. Mm. And if I teach somebody a skill so important as firefighter rescue or self-rescue, and I pushed and rushed them through it and did not teach it right and did not progress capture, they're going to fucking die. And that's on me as an instructor. So I'm very mindful of that. And guys are like, oh, dude, I teach the class this way. I teach the class this way. I understand that everybody has a way of teaching it. And firefighting and firefighter training is very local. But there is a way to train the human brain under stress that's not local. It's global. Mm-hmm. And that's the primary focus of my class.
I think one of the things that like people they're tied up by, and I know for me and the situations that we have at our department, we're not fortunate enough to put people through a 6-week academy when people get hired, right? We have a 2 to 3 week new hire orientation. And so a lot of times to hit everything that we need to hit, we focus a day, maybe even half a day on some of these big subjects, right? And so I think what's important that you just said is regardless of time, right, we can always still build that foundation of how they need to progress, right? And at some point, there's certain things that we can do on our own that we have to be able to hold our own standard to and be able to continue that process, right? Especially once we get, plugged in people at different stations and, the everyone kind of bought into everything we need to, which kind of leads me to my next thing is, when it comes to RIT, right, and those RIT training scenarios, a lot of people have like, and myself included at one point in my life, and I kind of heard you refer to this at one of the podcasts you did, like, I'm not the first person jumping up and down if I get assigned RIT on a structure file. Like, I'm not. I want to get inside and I want to do work. But at the same time, like, I take that very seriously. And I think a lot of people, and not speaking from personal experience, but I do think that the thought process behind RIT is just, hey, gather your stuff and, you're going to sit in the yard, right? I know for me, we use the term active RIT at my department, so it's different. But how do we get people to change their mindset from just standing in the front yard, waiting for the go, and actually getting involved with the call, with the scene, with the fire?
I'm trying my ass off. It's not a sexy skill, bro. I just had that conversation last night. It's funny with another Texas guy. We were talking about this going back and forth, and I was breaking his stones about his engine company class because I posted something on social media about you can't choke, you can't RIT. He texted me. Yeah. And I was like, man, listen, I just don't like to be wet. I don't want to be wet. If I get to choose dry or wet, I'm always going to pick dry, right? And we were breaking each other's stones about that. But I told him, listen, I'll be honest with him. I told him, if I get to a fire tomorrow morning, I'm on duty tomorrow morning, that this time tomorrow will be in the first half of my shift, and we make a fire tomorrow, RIT's not my first choice.
Right.
I get to pick. If J-Dub, that's what I call my Jesus, if J-Dub says, Rob, you get to pick where you're at that fire tomorrow, I promise you that RIT's not where I want to be, right after engine company. But I'm just kidding. I love you guys. So, but if I do get assigned RIT, I'm going to RIT like a motherfucker. And active RIT is golden. I love that. Pro active RIT, those RIT companies that go out there and operate as an effective outside truck company ready to meet the needs of the fire and the members fighting the fire, right, that makes RIT sexy. It does, because you're bringing the right tools for the right construction, for the right building. You're staging in the right location, not to where some policy says you're going to default to the command post. You're going to default to the sidewalk on the alpha side. You're going to default here, there, or the other. You're going to default to finding where the most amount of members are incurring the greatest amount of risk based on what the fire is doing and where it's going and where they're operating. And then you're going to go ahead and soften that side of the building. You're going to get to work and set up in a location where if and when that Mayday is struck, you are moving in a real quick manner to where those members are, because you've already pre-planned that in your minds. If you just show up, grab their basic tools, go stand by the command post, and just kind of like go through the motions of RIT, when it goes off, and it goes off real fast, you're going to be way behind the 8 ball, and the people you're coming to get are not going to get got. There's nothing that makes RIT sexier than for command, for the fire department, and for your members who are assigned to RIT to be allowed to work on the fire ground. work fixes everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you allow these members to address window issues, so forcible entry issues, ground ladder issues, right equipment, right tools, allow them to do a 360 or 720 of the structure to go look up, down, and around as well. And notify the members operating where everything is. Have them take a peek where the line is going to the Charlie side. Okay, I see them taking a peek in the Charlie side. I just took that door. The members are going to the second floor, Charlie Delta corner. There's a stairwell 20 feet ahead of me that goes right to where they are. Shut that door. We're not changing flow paths. We're not changing the world. I understand the data and the science. Walk back to my officer in charge of the RIT team and be like, hey, boss, I can see the companies that went in the Alpha side. They're 20 feet behind the Charlie side entry. They went upstairs and they're operating right above us. We're going to throw 2 ground ladders, one in the Charlie, one in the Delta. We're going to make sure that door stays closed. And if we do deploy, that's going to be our means of entry to get to our members as fast as possible. And these conversations, these actions need to be had, and it makes the RIT company effective. Once everybody's out and you don't need RIT anymore, man, if you can afford to reassign those members to something else, give them another job. They want to work. Everybody wants to work. Nobody wants to get to the party and hang out in the front yard. Like, yeah, dude, the party inside is popping, but you can't come in. We'll let you know how it is. Nobody wants to go to that kind of party.
Right.
We all want to be inside, man. You got to make it sexy. Otherwise, it's never going to take off. And what more important job is there, John? Think about it, man.
I don't know who said it, but it was something that I wrote down, and it's been in my head ever since, especially once I started learning more about RIT. But they said we need outstanding RITs, not RITs outstanding. And I heard it probably on a scrap, and I was like, that's what it is, right? Like, we need to be working, and I've been assigned RIT and been able to take burglar bars, and we're throwing ladders.
Love that.
Like that. And it's fun. Like, it's stuff that I don't ever typically get to do. I run an engine company. I'm sorry that you had to know that now. But
we're still friends.
Yeah. Luckily, like at my department, our engines, the only thing that I would say is fairly exclusive to the truck is vertical ventilation. Everything else, like, we search off the engine, we'll do RIT off the engine. Everything else is pretty much the same. So,
John, I'm going to circle back real quick.
Yeah.
Can I circle back? Like I said earlier, if you can't truck, you can't RIT. And that's how the conversation started. I just got to clear something up before we move forward, because I get a lot of hate for saying that, right? When I say if you can't truck, you cannot RIT, it does not mean you need to be a truckie or on a truck company. It means nothing. I don't give a shit if you show up there in a scooter. All right? If you get assigned to RIT, you need to be proficient at throwing ground ladders, multiple and advanced forcible entry techniques, searching, finding, dragging, removing onto ladders and out windows. If you cannot run a saw, throw ground ladders, move victims, find victims, throw victims out windows, take doors, then you're going to do really, really bad at RIT. Because no one's ever said, I hope you would have caught another hydrant during a RIT operation.
Right.
Okay? You need to set up and be effective in traditional truck company skills. You don't need to get off a truck in order to be effective. Like I said earlier, you can come off an ambulance, you can come off a rescue truck, you can come off an engine, you can come off a freaking scooter. Just be good at those skills. The problem is, in my region of the world, where Rob Ramirez goes to work every third day, the members here get put on RIT off an ambulance or off an engine or off a quint, and they have no desire to ever throw a ground ladder, or that's just not their primary duty in training or function. And that's bad for us, because if I'm inside and I call Mayday and 2 schmoes show up, they haven't thrown a ladder in 6 months or found the victim of their entire career, I'm in trouble, man. And my family's in trouble. So I don't care what you ride, just show up with a truck company mentality once you're assigned to RIT.
I love that, because, I was telling, I don't remember who I was having this conversation with, but I was talking about RIT, right? And I asked them the question, like, do you want the job of RIT? And they were, of course, like, no. And they're like, would you? And I flipped it on them, because I was trying to prove a point, and was just like, well, 100%, because I know my capabilities and I know what I'm capable of, right? And if I work with some of my best friends in this entire world, and if one of them are operating inside that building and it's up to me to get them out, I'm going to do everything in my power to get out. One, because they're my friend, obviously they're my brother, but number 2, like, I know their families. Like, if that's me on the other end of that line, like, I'm going to have to go look their kids in their eyes and tell them, like, hey, sorry, I wasn't prepared to go get your dad out of there. That's not something that I want to live with. So it's something that I personally take, very, very seriously. Anytime I'm assigned to RIT, I try to immerse myself in everything that you teach and preach, and the data, right? Like, I try to learn everything that I can about it. And, when it comes to, I know we're probably going back and forth, but when it comes to training for RIT and those realistic RIT training scenarios, right? What are some ways that we can implement those realistic RIT trainings, even with like limited capabilities? For instance, my department right now, we're building a new drill field, so we don't have access necessarily to a burn house or really anywhere to train. So what are some ways that you found successful to train with limited capabilities for RIT?
So think about everything we just mentioned, right? We just talked about taking doors, taking windows, doing searches, finding victims, dragging victims. You have the converting component. If you have to convert, if you have to give them air, is it a low pressure emergency? Is it a high pressure emergency? Are you fixing this with a transfill? Or are you fixing this with a regulator mass replacement? Those are all individual skills that need to be broken down and turned into training blocks. And then you bring them all together, and then you put together a drill, right? Once you do a drill, it's more of a rehearsal, right? But you're learning to play the instrument one chord at a time. So I can't start rehearsing day one, you hand me a guitar, right? So control it, keep it small, don't make it big, and find every component of that RIT operation that you could possibly do and turn that into a training module. And once every member has been successful in that training module, then you introduce the actual drill, which becomes a rehearsal, and then the fireground becomes a performance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good. And I know
we think too big, John.
Right. That's exactly
firemen think way too big.
And you could do this stuff in the Bay, right? Like I know we do. On our crew, we try to avoid the asking your wife what they want to eat for dinner scenario. So we have like the whole Mayday Mondays and Tactics Tuesdays, and so one of the last Mayday Mondays, all we did was air pack conversion, just over and over and over again.
Simple.
I think that what that's doing though is it's building our base level, right? And
absolutely.
I've heard you reference Atomic Habits, and Atomic Habits is one of my favorite books. It's arguably one of the books that changed my life. And whenever we're doing the habit stacking, right? I like the habit stacking. We're just building these systems and processes in our heads. And just like the old saying goes, like we don't rise to the level of the occasion, we fall to the level of our system.
Correct.
And I'm trying, like what we're trying to do is just build that bottom level to be elevated, right? So we're trying not to do the lizard brain thing and kind of shit the bed whenever these things happen. We're falling down to what we've trained on hundreds of times. So
progress requires relearning. You have to relearn shit. You have to update your systems throughout your entire career. Progress requires relearning.
I love that, man. I love that. And then, so going back and kind of like to the stress part of everything, the human behavior under stress. And when it comes to stress acclimation and that artificial, are you doing, like, I know you mentioned the auditory exclusions. Are you doing like physical inducers as well? Like I've heard of people like jumping on echo bikes and everything like that. And, I know that I'm trying to remember the Dave Grossman thing. It's he has different levels to it. The white, the yellow, the red.
Yeah, the Cooper's colors, different colors, right? For the heart rate driven.
The heart rate driven colors. And when we're training, like I try to keep this in mind, and I know this is kind of getting a little nerdy. What are we shooting for? Like what level, if you will, are we trying to shoot for whenever we're doing these stress acclimations?
So when we're training, now, again, I'm going to circle back to my previous answer. I'm hardcore with this shit, bro. Like I really, really am. Yes, we add physical resiliency and like the front end. We front load the more advanced scenarios with a physical task, right? They don't sit out there and do 100 air squats and 100 burpees. I'm not that guy, right? But they will do a physical task to get their heart rate up. They will get themselves worked up in a more advanced scenario. We do understand that sights and sounds and smells drive our emotions and create we're going to get nerdy, okay? An amygdala hijack. The amygdala, which is the part of the brain that reacts to these invaders and situations, starts doing things to the body naturally that we want it to do in order for our students to get tense. But like I said, there isn't something that is a 100% foolproof recipe. This is the way you have to train firefighters for stress inoculation. Stress inoculation takes weeks and weeks and months, and we just don't have that time. We don't have that time. Then when you stop introducing them to it, they default back their baseline, whatever life gave them. If they grew up in a silver spoon household where everything was perfect, that threshold is really, really low. If they grew up and had a tougher upbringing in a tougher part of the country and with different circumstances, that threshold may be a little bit higher. But that has to do with the human being, not the firefighter in uniform. So yes, we can train them. Yes, we can get them there. But if they don't keep themselves there, eventually they're going to start defaulting back to what God gave them. Man, this is 100% data-driven and tested and proved over and over and over again. The second you stop using these things, you're going to default, and no one just remains neutral. Every defaults back down to where they were. Your skill set, including stress inoculation, picture waves hitting the beach, and every wave just eats away at the sand, and that sand is your skill set. And the only way that you can prevent the beach erosion is by adding more sand. And it's a give and take that never ends. It never, ever ends. Guys are like, yeah, I threw a ladder, 2 years ago, or I did this a year ago, or I did that 6 months ago. I got 20 years in the job. I've thrown ground ladders my whole career. When was the last time you did it? In full gear. I packaged it down firefighter. When did you package it down firefighter? In full gear, 500 degrees of your neck, below 3 feet, and you can't see your hand in front of your face with a stress-driven heart rate of 150, 160. Not exertion, because the only reason that we exert our members before advanced scenarios is just to get their heart rate up, because it makes it harder for them to breathe. And breathing is the freaking key. Once we get them to open their mouth and breathe through their mouth and turn them into a Neanderthal, at that point, we've exceeded their biological capacity. So their VO2 max, or the way that their body uses and their muscle uses oxygen effectively, is driven really by how they're breathing. The second you start taking big gulps of air through your mouth, you've met your biological ability, and now you're exceeding it. And at some point, you have to come back to nose breathing. So my only goal in training is to get them to start mouth breathing. And at that point, we put them right in the scenario. Introducing smells, sounds, and sights. Removing their ability to use their first plan. So there's a lot of mind that goes into our actual skill, which is why I don't try to teach everything, because I can't do everything like that. When we do our classes, very, very, very particular to the students and the way that we do it. And fully understanding, John, that when they leave there, and I hope they understand that, it's not a permanent state. Whether they did good or bad, failure is not a permanent state, and victory is not a permanent state. They need to keep building and working on that. And I hate the word stress inoculation, because if you actually become a student of stress inoculation, it takes a very long time. No one class is an inoculated member. You need to take years and years and years of productive, sequential, and effective artificial stress training to make it inoculate. Right. Then you got to give it a booster, just like a vaccine.
Yeah, just like a vaccine. That's a naughty word in Texas, right?
Yeah, I don't use that shit, but I was going to say something too, but I'm not that guy. I can't. It's politics. So everyone loves a Mayday Mindset.
And I wanted to tell a funny story, but
please do.
No, the book on combat, right? They talk about a lot of these troops. They go over in combat. It's their first time experience these high stress situations, and it's not uncommon for them to void themselves. They shit their pants, they piss their pants, right? And a lot of people have trouble just like, I don't know that I've ever will be. Like, I remember my first structure fire, and I didn't, it wasn't very stressful, obviously, but I didn't have the need to, shit myself. But my wife's going to find this funny. So my second child, he was born in the car on the way to the hospital.
What?
Yeah, man, it was crazy. So I'm a paramedic, and I didn't do anything paramedic-y on that call whatsoever.
Same.
The worst, I think the only thing that I told my wife was like, stimulate the shit out of him, and I turned the heat up all the way because it was really cold outside. And Great. So right after my son was born, and my wife hadn't even like delivered the placenta yet. This is going to be somewhat embarrassing. I told her, I said, babe, I know you're about to hate me right now. I was like, but I've got to go take a shit. And like, it was that moment, man. Like, it was like, I either ruin both seats right now, or I'm just going to leave real quick and I'll be back. And that was 100% stress induced, 100%.
Holy cow.
It was rough, man. And like, so I've lived that, and I've kind of made myself, to that. And part of the reason is like I told you, I'm a paramedic. I had never ran a childbirth call before. Like, knock on wood, I don't want to. And that's like my first one was my own wife and my own child. And yeah, it puts a different perspective to it.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever, you know, you hear these stories of the guys that did go over to combat, and the first time they did, you know, they had bullets whizzing over their head and they shit their pants, and you give them 6 months, and now they're lighting their cigarettes off, you know, the trail of the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's true, but like, that's how calm they are in
Mm-hmm.
those scenarios. And so I feel like that's what we have to build ourselves up to do, through holding our own standard, right? Just like you said, once they leave your class, once they leave whatever class they're going to that tries to build up that, you know, the physical resilience and the mental resilience, they have to do that on their own. So back at the firehouse, back at home, what are some ways that we can continue to build on that day after day after day?
So honestly, if you're not going to build an entanglement box at your house and start doing all those bailouts and entanglement props and all that you would need. What you can control is your biology. So what I would urge guys is at home, specifically to what you just asked, right? Work on your biology, and your biology meaning your breathing and your resiliency to the suck. So all these guys that go out there and embrace that suck and do those crazy gear workouts and go after it and do triathlons and do this, that, or the other, or get themselves like, you know, crazy heart rate, exertion driven and heat, bunker gear and all that. Those workouts require a certain level of, you know, callous for that brain to be like, yeah, it's cool to keep going. But biologically, your brain needs to believe that that's okay. And your brain also needs to know how to work your way down from that. So you need to incorporate breathing techniques at work to get yourself down and control, so that if and when you're ever in a situation where that exertion is not, that heart rate is not exertion driven, but, you know, stress hormone induced, a dump of catecholamines and dopamine and epinephrine and all the things that your body uses to get shit going, fight or flight, they can breathe their way out of that or control that emotion because their body recognizes it as, hey, we've been there before, we know what works for us. The problem is that there is no breathing technique that works for everyone. Our biology and our makeup is like a fingerprint. We're all different. So you have to also be very mindful, even as an instructor or as a teacher or as a senior member or company officer, when you hear things like skip breathing or wheel breathing or this, that, or the other, you don't teach it as a foolproof method to anyone because it doesn't work for everyone based on their biology and ability to produce oxygen their body can use under stress to get themselves out of that jam. Right. So what I normally do is teach the guys in the class, these are your options that I know biologically make sense, and then apply it during physical exertion, see which one works for your biology. But I don't tell them, you automatically have to go this, that, or the other. And whatever you do nowadays, we know that skip breathing during firefighter rescue, or AKA voluntarily underventilating yourself, is something that's not productive. And the brain loves two things, man. The human brain, which makes your decisions, loves two things, and two things only. It loves air and it loves glucose. See a person with no glucose, they're acting wacky. See somebody with no air, they're acting wacky. They make poor cognitive decisions. Their algorithms don't work. Box A doesn't go to box B doesn't go to box C. So when I'm under stress, below 3 feet, fully encapsulated, every decision I make can result in a coffin, a challenge coin, and if I'm in the hood, a t-shirt with my face on it, all right? If everything has those 3 terminal consequences, and I try to hold my breath, it ain't happening, bro. Because the second I hold my breath and skip a breath and hold my breath, my body's going to say, fuck you, and the next 14 breaths are going to be at 100 miles per hour, because that acid that I just built up has to go somewhere. And the only place it can go is either to my brain via bloodstream, or out my mouth in an exhale. I can't control that speed. So I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'm holding my breath and taking 14 breaths. So the bottle is like doing this, and my biology is doing that, and I cannot think in that way. So I caution guys and girls to defaulting to skip breathing and things like that, even teaching it or thinking that it works. We're a more educated fire service now. We're a much more educated fire service now. We're a more educated society. The information's out there. If you choose to be voluntarily ignorant, that's on you, but don't pass that shit along. We don't need it.
So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about is just like myself, activating a Mayday. I've gotten in a bind and I'm activating a Mayday. What are the steps that you would teach someone to walking them through a Mayday? If you are calling a Mayday, what are you going to do?
I'd like to hope that if I call a Mayday, it's not a Mayday where I have to make a decision like right now, right? Because that time compressed decision, none of us can ever say they did the right or wrong thing, right? Really, really good firemen all across this country have called Maydays and died in fires that would be rock stars in every organization in the world, including their own. So, and it's just because a time compressed decision. They just didn't have the opportunity to process enough information, and they had to make a decision. And fate had it that everything they did was right, but they still ended up in a bad situation. Well, if I'm in one of those situations, you really got to just, it's a flip of the coin. I hope that my default to my training, and I call the Mayday the way that I teach to call the Mayday, the way I've taught myself to call the Mayday in training, and then move through my systems. If it's a window egress, if it's a door egress, if it's, through the wall egress, I'm hoping I have that. What I can control, John, is what happens to me before I ever get to that fire. The tools I bring with me to that fire, the way that my gear is set up in case I do call my Mayday, right? Those things are fully studied and controlled. My gear set up to where I can self-rescue. My cutters are where they're supposed to be. My backup cutters is where they're supposed to be. Is the right type of cutter to use in a zero visibility environment. My right leg has my personal escape kit. My gear set up. My hood is up. My flaps are down. My gloves are easy to use. My gear's broken in. My SCBA feels like it's not even on my back. I'm comfortable in my mask because I train in it all the time. I understand what works with my biology for skip breathing or not skip breathing or Riley breathing or whatever technique I'm using. I understand my biology, so I'm front loading all the variables I can control to meet my opponent in the worst day possible. But even if I give him everything I got, you still can end up in a bad situation and jammed up, right? I don't know if I get to pick my Mayday and I'm just, let's say, lost or disoriented,
Sure.
or if I had an air issue where I'm 25 feet into the building and the guys are coming to get me, I'm going to focus on what I can now, teach, focus on my breathing, focus on setting off my pass device intermittently, shutting it off, understanding that if I just leave that thing beeping and beeping and beeping, but I'm not moving, it's not, it's going to help people find me, but it's not going to help me get myself out of a jam. And the data tells me that I'm my best chance for survival, right? Mm-hmm. Not the red team coming for me, not the company that's operating by me, not the company that I showed up to the fire with, but me. I am my own best chance for survival. So I need to control my biology. And noise pollution is a form of artificial stress, which is why we set off pass devices, play rock music, this, that, or the other, loud audio and communications. So if my pass device goes off, I'll make sure I can control it. I know how to take my air pack on and off under stress and zero visibility because I've trained to that level, right? Appropriately, realistically. I'll find a wall. I'll go hands high on the wall. Yeah, but it's too hot. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Like, in my mind, I am writing these off to the point where if I have to take a glove off because I've lost dexterity because I'm so stressed out, I already know I'm taking my left glove off because I'm right-handed. And I don't want to learn how to brush my teeth with my left hand or wipe my ass with my left hand. That's weird, right? So I've made all these plans. I'm hoping that I can find the corner if it's the last minute and I can't get out and now I need to preserve my bottle. Then I can find the corner face down, keep my mask on, don't take my mask off, set my path device off, convert myself so they don't have to convert me. I carry a pickoff strap in my left leg. I can do a belt conversion with gloves on. All these things have come through my mind. No one's ever found anybody, like by searching in a spot where nobody would be. So I make sure I can try to get by a door, get past the threshold of the doorway, find a window, hands high. Because a lot of times you'll hear case studies where guys search through these rooms and they end up just missing windows by inches with their gloves. Mm-hmm. And they're found dead 2-3 rooms down the hall. But they missed it by inches because they stayed low, they crawled low. These things have to get figured out, man, because this is a dangerous job. And it's really hard to go undefeated your entire career. It's so hard to go undefeated your entire career. This is a hard job to win in. And if you do not play out the worst case scenario, then you're really doing a shitty job for yourself, your crew, and your family. Every single pilot for every single airline goes through an emergency checklist prior to flight. Every single time they get on the airplane. Why don't we do that when we're running into strangers' buildings on fire? God, that shit will never happen to me, bro. It's never happened here before. I don't know anybody who's been in a Mayday. Blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Shit that never happens all the time. And it's our job to be ready for it. For yourself, your crew, and your family.
Man, that's awesome. I don't even know what to say after that. That was good. One of the things that I want to circle back to is like you mentioned how you carry your gear. And someone put it this way to me, is that they spent their first part of their career seeing how much stuff they could fit in their pockets. And they've spent the second half figuring out what they could take out. And so kind of along those lines, everything I carry in my pockets have a reason to be there for me. What do you carry and where do you carry it on your pod?
So it's funny because, sometimes I was the same guy. We're all the same. I had like the entire firestore.com on my gear. I had all the bells and whistles. I looked like a fucking train coming at you in a fire with all the lights and shit on my helmet. Yeah. You thought you were about to get run over in the hallway. No, I got none of that. Everything on my person is purposeful, right? Everything is where it's supposed to be. Part of my class, I talk about what I refer to as the action area. It's a data-driven component in my person, which runs from my heads-up display on my regulator cup, shoulder to shoulder, and down to my seatbelt buckle. Nothing below my waist. Why? The data supports me in a self-rescue situation, having access only to that area. So let's think about what you carry in that area. I have a bypass valve. I have a heads-up display with color metrics, so I know how much air I'm breathing, right? Give myself a breath, wipe my mask. I have a vibe alert. I have a pass device that I can set off. It gives me my remote air gauge, right? On my top left pocket, I keep a pair of cutters. With the golf ball, guys, so I put the golf ball through it, goes in the dark with paracord. So I have access to it, so everything is not soft and pillowy. I can find it in the dark because I anticipate dexterity loss. My lower pockets of my coat, on my opposite side of my shoulder, primary cutter is my secondary cutter because it tells me I'm going to end up in one or two positions during a Mayday. Number one, face down in the prone position. Number two, on my left or right side. Very few times will you end up on your back because you're wearing an air pack. So you'd be like a turtle on your shell. And then the data also tells me that it doesn't support us keeping anything that's for self-rescue on my pant legs, so I'm not going to have access to it. Okay? So anything below my waist is no good. So in my action area, I carry everything I need for myself. And I think about the military. I think about the guys going, beyond the wire, off base, in a combat area. I'm thinking about the guys that go on the road every day, police officers. My brother-in-law's been a police officer for 20-plus years, my sister's husband, and we talk all the time. And these guys don't show up to work one day and be like, okay, I'm going to go extra ammo on the right side today, not on the left side. Okay, I'm going to go non-lethal taser. Instead of having it on my right side, I'm going to put it on my left side. Oh, Wacky Wednesdays, I'm going to put my tourniquet on the left side, not the right side. They don't do that because they fully understand that under stress, when the target and that paper starts to shoot back at you, it changes your biology. They fully understand that. And you're reaching for shit that's always where it's supposed to be. And it needs to be where the data tells you it is and where the street tells you it works best based on your setup. My setup is my setup, and it always will be until something comes out and says, hey, Rob, you need to relearn this. But I match the data with what I know works for me and the streets and the case studies. That now we have 15,000, 16,000 case studies of near misses and maydays. And they all speak the same language. One says, you'll find me here 20% of the time. The other one says, you'll find me here 19% of the time. You read the next study, it says, you'll find me here 18% of the time. Oh, Rob, one said 18, one said 19, one said 20. So that's not accurate. Yeah, you're right. But in this world, I'm not looking for accuracy. I'm not looking for confirmation. I'm looking for affirmation. I don't need to confirm the data to be perfect. I need to affirm that I'm in the ballpark and 16,000 cases are within 3 or 4% of each other. So it's making sense. At that point, the difference is who's saying the story. That's it. And their personal experience, their perception of their reality. But man, John, my gear is the same way each and every time. I don't change it. I have my inverted flashlight on one side, my primary set of cutters on my other side, remote gauge on one side, shut it on, shut it off. Lower coat pockets, I keep my secondary cutter in case I can't access it. I end up on one side or the other. My leg pockets are for me if I can move, man. My right leg pocket has a 50-foot of rope with an integrated bailout kit and hook with a descender. And that sits mid-thigh, lateral on my right leg pocket. That's for me. My left leg pocket is for them. Come across a victim or come across a down fireman. I have a big all strap there and a piece of webbing. It's already pre-sewn and tied. I also understand another thing. I'm not going to be tying webbing inside zero visibility, wearing oven mitts with a heart rate of 150 and no dexterity and pupillary dilation. Doesn't happen, bro. We're going back to the MacGyver, paperclip and condom thing.
Right.
A lot of these systems that are out there right now, and you guys listening can use your imagination what systems these are. All right. But everybody has a gimmick. If your gimmick requires me to use fine motor skill and or visibility with a heart rate driven above 150 because of stress, not exertion, below 3 feet, and you still think it's going to work, I'll use it. If there's any chance for failure, it's not part of my algorithm. And it never will be because, yeah, it's a cool system in a polished concrete floor training tower. It's a cool system with Hollywood smoke inside a burned building that has no risk or consequences for terminal failure. It's a cool system where there's 4 instructors standing around stopping you from hurting yourself. It's a cool system in the apparatus bay of your firehouse. It's a cool system on YouTube. But your system needs to match the real world. And the real world is freaking crazy. Below 3 feet, zero viz, happening fast, time compressed decisions, can't see nothing, can't think nothing, can't touch nothing, can't hear nothing, and go. So I'm very reliant on myself and not on the systems that are out there right now.
Yeah, and exactly what you said goes back to what you guys preach, the whole data-driven street vetting. You guys are teaching the things that work and that you either have experience with yourself or know someone that's what it's worked for. And you just can, like, everything that I'm hearing, and I'm just trying to reiterate some of the things you said, is just building those systems for the worst day, for us and for them. You have to build those systems because, like I said earlier, we don't rise to the level of occasion, we fall to the level of our system. And when our systems are strong, we know where to go on our gear, whether it be our cutters or the webbing or the pick-off strap, whatever it may be. And one of the things that I think you said in one of your podcasts is time is the enemy and efficiency is our weapon. And so the more reps we run, the more reps we do, the more efficient that we're becoming. And, one thing I wanted to just talk about is, and it kind of had my mind stirring a little bit, is the whole post that you made yesterday. You can't rid if you can't truck, right? And so one of the main things, like, if you are the RIT team, and I understand the data and RIT's fairly low on that, but if you are the RIT team, something else that goes hand in hand with that is search. And you have to be good at search to be good at RIT. Does your search technique, if you're activated as the RIT team, change anything? If like I said, if you're the RIT team and headed in for a down fireman, does your search technique, do the probable areas change for you?
Yes.
What is different? What is different for the fireman versus going in for civilian?
Your primary RIT duty is to get to the down fireman fast, right? Think about arousal and cues, right? What's my arousal? What are my cues? An arousal is something I can hear, feel, touch, smell. So the first arousal that I'm going to look for is going to be the information I receive via audio. This is where he's operating. This is where he's at. This is where he was last known to be at. This is where the company was assigned in the building. Which is why it's so important that when you call your Mayday, the first thing you say is where you are, not who you are. Right. So if that's the last transmission you can get out, at least we can start geolocating you and sending resources to that area so we can come across you, right? So that, who, what, where? No, how about where? That's the only thing Lunar got right by putting location first at L. That location is everything. You need to know where this member is. So going back to your question, if I get dispatched and I'm searching as a RIT team, we move as a RIT team in a very systematic fashion. We're going towards the last known location. We're going towards the sound of the pass device. We're moving in a direction where the firefighter who is down was last known to be at. Because, like you said earlier, that's actually, let me give credit to Ben Schultz. Ben Schultz from the city of West Palm Beach teaches an amazing class. If you don't have him on your podcast yet, I recommend that you reach out to Ben. I'll give you the information later. One of the best guys in the market. In his class, he is the time guy, right? And time is the enemy. Efficiency is our tool. So that actual statement is so true in the world of RIT, because in that time compressed environment, how long can you hold your breath? How long can you survive in that max deadlift environment where everything you do is a max rep. And that's what it feels like to the end user. Talk to these guys. Understand how heavy they felt. It's a nightmare. So think about the way you're moving and compare it to your paramedic, right? Mm-hmm. You've done active shooter or active killer training from the police departments in your area, right? Yeah, Texas has been on the news for that lately. So are we. Yep. As we're moving, or those police officers are moving through that building initially, are they searching every cabinet, every drawer, every closet for the bad guy? No. They're looking for stimulus and arousal. Blood, bullet casings, and gunshot. Pop, 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 pop. And they're running and flooding that area of resources and bypassing hallways and victims and blood and doors that they normally would slowly and meticulously search. When I am a deployed RIT team, I am that initial contact team with the threat, and the threat is time. So I am not searching every nook and cranny like a secondary search or traditional secondary search. It's targeted. It's an area that we need to make, and we need to make it now. Which is why, if you circle back to our conversation in the beginning, where I stage my resources on my team on that fire ground matter. Because all that cool shit that we do in the front end is to set up for success in the back end. Because the good RIT team thinks that a RIT activation or a Mayday is a probability, not just a possibility. That's that mindset you got to go in there with to be effective. Right. So I hope that answers your question, bro.
No, yeah, it 100% did. Like I said, that's 100% what I was looking for, because in my head, I've never been in a RIT scenario. I don't really know anyone that has, but just how we get to that fireman. Obviously, if it's an unknown location, right, then I think probably does become more of a search rather than getting to where we thought they were, because we don't have their last known location.
Everything slows down.
Right.
Everything slows down, and now all we have left is where they were operating last, and we go through command. And that's why it's so important to listen to transmissions. You just stand there talking to your buddies as they go by. Somebody on that RIT company has got to be monitoring transmissions to know where everything is and what's happening.
Right. So as an instructor, as really probably just a person, you seem like a very, very passionate person, which I love, because I'm passionate as well. And being young and passionate sometimes gets me a little in trouble. And there's something that you say all the time that someone told me, and I don't know if they got it from you, but I may or may not have let my mouth get the best of me in a certain scenario. And someone sat me down and they told me, like, hey man, listen, there's levels to this. Mm-hmm. And it's okay that someone's on a different level than you. Can you just elaborate on you're saying, I'm giving it to you, the fact that there's levels to this game?
There's levels to this shit. That helps me. So as a younger fireman, let me circle back. I think Kurt Isaacson talks about emotional intelligence. I lacked emotional intelligence, right? Everybody needed to be as bought in as I was. If they didn't, they sucked, right? Don't suck less, don't suck. If they weren't training, they sucked. If they weren't going to conferences, they sucked. If they didn't want to learn what I just learned, they sucked, right? But a lot of them are really good firemen. They met the needs of their occupation, their job description to a T. You can never write them up, they can never get in trouble, and they probably would do a good job if Mrs. Smith called me to their house. But I had an issue with their lack of passion. And it's okay to understand that there's levels. My passion level is unhealthy. I'm doing a podcast at noon, right? My passion level is taking me next month to another state, and the month after that to another state, and last month to another state, where I could be home, being dad, and working on life and not legacy, So I understand that there's levels to this, because I'm at a level where I need to tone down and relax and slow myself down. And there's other guys that you need to kind of pick up and bring with you. And those are the guys you need to focus on, the guys that are willing to pick themselves up and go with you. They're always out there. And if they're not, you're in the wrong firehouse, right? But the guys that sit there and they don't want to be a part of the process, you can't hate them for it, man. You really can't hate them for it. But you also don't need to associate yourself with them. It's okay for them to be different, and it's okay for them to be on a different level. That's one part of it. Another part of it is you're hungry and you're real passionate, and you want your outlet. You want this podcast to blow up. You want to be able to get out there and give information and make the fire service better. And there's another podcast out there that's getting guests that you can never get. There's another podcast out there that's been around for 10 years and people are lined up to go to. And sponsors are paying every second of it for them. They're at a different level than you, John. Mm-hmm. But they earned their way there. No one takes the freaking high-speed elevator to that part of the world. You got to build your steps one step at a time. You can take the next one. Then build your step as you're moving up. Build the next one. Every now and then you can build 3 or 4 steps and pop. You did some cool shit, right? But it's that slow growth that becomes sustainable change. Nothing that comes fast stays there. Mm. So it's a slow grind. It's a slow burn. It reminds me to slow down. It reminds me that it's okay for guys to be doing things that I'm not doing yet. And then it also reminds me that there's guys that are never going to do what I'm doing. And I'm got to still be good with them and be more emotionally intelligent. So there's a lot of happening with that phrase for me in my mind. I make it for myself. I talk about it. It makes sense to me.
You just hit on several things that I could elaborate on that are, personal to me. And, something to circle back to is like exactly what you said. It's with Atomic Habits. Like I said, honestly, I heard you mention it, I think, on the scrap that was mm-hmm. one of your favorite books. It's one of my favorite books. And mm-hmm. It's a lot of affirmation, and I've lived by that 1% rule for a long time prior to me ever reading that book. And then once I read it, it was just like mind blowing. Mm-hmm. But just doing something every day to get myself to where I want to be. And that's what I try to live. I have 3 kids that are inside right now, and mm-hmm. at nap time, if one of them decides they're not going to take a nap, like, guess what? They're coming in the garage, and I'm going to get a workout in with them. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just
mine just got home right now. I have an 18-month-old that just got home right now. I heard the door downstairs open. So we're in trouble.
Yeah. I hear you on that one. But a lot of it is just like, it's almost for selfish reasons, right? Like, I have a friend that luckily is not only a friend, but a mentor. And he tells me all the time, like, are you saying that for personal gain, or are you trying to add value to something? Right. And that's me. I just want to try to add value to just about anyone that I come in contact with, right, whether that be small or big. And I like you said with the podcast, like mm-hmm. for me personally, like, I just want to be able, selfishly, there's selfish ambitions behind it. I get to talk to guys like yourself and learn more that other people might not be willing to put in the effort to learn. But secondly, like, if I can affect one person, one young fireman that listens to this, and they don't go down being shallow to someone, right? And they understand that there are levels of this, and don't make the same mistakes that I did, or same mistakes you did, or same mistakes mm-hmm. whoever I'm talking to that day did, like, then this is doing its job for me.
Amen, bro.
So I don't really know how long we've been going, but I feel like it's been quite some time. Upcoming trainings. I know you're headed to a couple of different conferences this year. You have a couple different classes. What do you have in the works coming up pretty quick?
Real quick. So upcoming trainings, we're pretty busy schedule this year, doing some local stuff here during the time that I'm not away from here. Like I said, I have an 18-month-old downstairs, and then I have my 16-year-old too that you guys may or may not know has special needs, so he requires a lot of time and from me. So that's my priority right now. But as far as trainings, I just got back from West Virginia. If you haven't been to the Country Roads Fire Conference, give them a look. Great guys up there. Joey Baxton and his brother, they're crushing it. The inside guys are a home run. Anytime you can do a training with Chief Starnes, retired now, or Joey Baxton, those guys, and Tommy, you guys need to get out there and do it, man. It's a home run. This month, we're doing Kentucky. We're going to be in the Lexington area. A month after that, we're going to be in Texas for the, how do you say that?
The Dadgum?
Dadgum. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
In April, I'm not going to FDIC. 5 years in a row, not selected. I don't know what I need to do to break that mold, but FDIC, I love you. But I am going to Germany, and we're going to be doing a class in Germany at the end of April, beginning of May. Those are my next 3 stops, and it's going to be a home run. Going over there with Andy Starnes, Cody Terrestrial, and Kyle Romigas. And the 4 of us are going to go to Germany and do some cool shit with our German brothers.
That is awesome. That's quite a year you have planned. So
that's just the first 4 months.
Yeah, that's just the first 4 months. If people want to get a hold of you, Rob, and schedule you or just ask a question, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. My email is Rob, R-O-B, Ramirez, R-A-M-I-R-E-Z, @MaydayMindset.com. Or you can call me on my cell. I don't give a shit. I'll give it out, 305-407-4708. If I can answer, I'll answer. But please be mindful. I'm on Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
So, and I'm an old man. I go to bed early because I have a baby.
Well, thanks again, Rob. I really appreciate you being on the podcast and just coming and sharing your passion. I've really enjoyed this, and hopefully I catch you down at the Daggum because I'm really trying to make the lecture day for that. So
I'm looking forward to meeting you, bro. Honestly, hope you can make it. When I get in town, shoot me a text. We're coming in, I believe, on the 20th of that month, and we're going to be there for 5 days. And thank you for having me on. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I love talking shop. I look forward to doing this again down the line about something else. I feel like we can talk about these topics for hours. And I hope the guys and girls listening get something out of it. Take care and God bless, bro.
I think they will. I appreciate you, man. Hey, thanks, guys, for watching and listening. This has been episode number 6 with Captain Rob Ramirez. I just wanted to take a little time and tell you about a sale we have going on right now at tailboardmisfits.com. Our hoodies are 15% off. We have 2 different versions. One's black with white. The other one is black with red. And if you use the discount code hoodie15 at checkout, you'll get 15% off of them. You won't be disappointed. I believe the sale is going on until the end of February. So go get you a hoodie and maybe a hat as well. Also wanted to talk about an upcoming conference that we're going to be a part of. It's going to be a phenomenal time. It's the Come and Take It Fire Conference. It's going to be hosted in Grapevine, Texas, April 5th through 7th. The lineup speaks for itself. We got Chief Clyde Gordon, Lieutenant Tim Klett, Lieutenant Ray McCormick, Chief Rob Backer, Chief John Lightly. Jeremy Donch from National Fire Radio is going to be there as the MC. It's going to be a great time. We're having 2 days of lecture with socials afterwards, as well as 1 day of hands-on training. You don't want to miss it. Once again, thank you. This has been Tailboard Misfits Podcast.